Hello, this is Thomas Darwood. I'm making this impromptu talk on Sunday, the 27th of November 2016, in Stratford-upon-Avon. In my website entitled Two Brits, what it tries to convey is an idea and two implementations. The idea is in the likeness of a blockbuster film, and we're looking at it in a cinema in which the two small boxes beneath the massive screen is Brexit, and for that matter also the Remainers. That puts into context the scale between the two exit signs to allude to the two parties, Brexiteers and the Remainers, and what this blockbuster film will do to put these two into context. I offer myself as a 21st century Joseph to increase, but that's what Joseph means in a biblical context. Joseph's stature led from a chosen family to an entire nation. That was the measure of increase. If you can picture in your mind's eye your family turning into an entire nation, that is your legacy, then you get some idea of what the biblical Joseph achieved, but not at his own hand. It was achieved under the Almighty's custodianship and patronage. For after the death of Joseph, the people of the Israelites left Egypt under Moses' leadership. And when they reached in sight of the promised land, God forbade Moses to symbolize to all of Israel what they needed to do when they entered the promised land. Now, the picture in CinemaScope in Technicolor is all about the Almighty downloading art and science which created an entire civilization. It is the place of abode that the Almighty chose to reside, and in Western civilization you have one supreme religion of Christianity. When it is understood that a 21st century Joseph comes to increase, not by a percentage point, but actually to increase it by its major sections. So let me put it into an analogy. When we think of an increase, say on our house, like a little porch or an annex or conservatory, that is our notion of what increase means. But imagine if increase means to actually build the entire house. Then you've got some idea of what that increase means in context of what was there before. To Christianity, and I'm sorry about this analogy, what it first proposed was based upon the Christian gospel centered upon Christ. That has now lost appeal to people because it is like this garden shed or the annex. I'm sorry if it offends a lot of people, but to get through the message I need to say this, not to offend, but to get the message across. When you create the entire edifice, the building, the whole structure, then you've got Christianity in its conclusive message. And here is slightly misleading, the word conclusive, because it suggests it comes at the end, and the last bit at the end is the message. No, the whole thing is the message. Secularism based upon art and science is the message that I am commissioned to bring forth. And that is going to create the power in which it can be transfigured politically, economically, and culturally. That has to be at the heart of what I have to offer. The increase in the appeal of Christianity will not be by a percentage point. It will actually be 90 to 99% of the entire message. But let me add a cryptic note so that Christians won't be offended by this, because I am a Christian. This will do exactly what John the Baptist did. In biblical times, he will make ready for the Lord a people prepared. But in this case, it will be the figure of Adam that will make ready for the Lord a people prepared. To put into context the dual salvation as I've described before. When people appreciate this, they will flock to the churches not out of a sense of guilt, but out of a sense of gratitude. Because then they can see it from both positions, that we need God's forgiveness because we are the way we are. But the way we are is not as a result of our own doing, it is a result of our evolutionary development as prescribed by Charles Darwin. And that is going to make all the difference to people like who have gay relations, etc., and who may be born with deformities. They no longer have to feel that they are guilty in any way. The Creator is responsible, and He's shown His responsibility towards humanity in a dual form of salvation. One is centered upon Christ, the other is centered upon art and science, and the figure of Adam represents the gift of comprehension through art and science. Now, at the square root of all this is the capability of nation building. And when God thrusts this greatness upon humanity, it was to such a degree that it created an entire civilization comprised of smaller units which we call nations. What I can propose now as the best thing, pragmatic thing to evolve out of all these theological ideas is to put into practice the idea of creating a nation. And the practical suggestion I offer is to lease that piece of land from the east of London right up to the Thames estuary. Lease it to the United Nations so they can take responsibility for nation building, implemented through building a third London airport, which should be called the United Nations International Airport, because they're going to pay for it. The nation members of the United Nations will pay for this airport because they're leasing British land, and they're also going to lease British workers to superintend the construction not only of the airport, but also of nation building expertise. So, for example, in this, say, 10-year period, migrants across Europe and North Africa can be given freedom of movement to come to this particular Thames corridor and be given jobs and a livelihood for a span of 10 years where they can be equipped to move on from that particular location into hopefully a piece of land that can be given by the European states, and for that matter by Russia, to show to the world that their generosity and belief in nation building will give to all these despotic people, homeless people, a hope to build a new country. Whilst they are here, they could be citizens of the United Nations, not citizens of the UK, but citizens of the United Nations. Whilst they are here in that capacity, they can also be given freedom of movement into Europe for cultural, political and economic exchange, whilst they're being offered nation building instruction, to put it in a few words. Whatever happens in this particular plot of land, Britain can direct all its energies through this particular channel to get back into Europe, if you see what I mean. And the question of freedom of movement is not evaded, but it is channeled in a way that can benefit everyone. Britain can do a hard Brexit exit, but they can do a soft remain by getting back into Europe through these people who we allow in. Obviously, they need to be scrutinised and they need to know what they need to achieve as a result of coming in. This is a fabulous opportunity for Britain to show to the world what it is capable of. And that means not only Europe and the United States, but to the rest of the world, the Commonwealth countries, etc., Far Eastern countries, South America, all these countries that look to improve their status. And I believe Britain should have a much broader horizon. But its roots will always remain with Europe and the United States. And the last pragmatic idea that I propose as a 21st century Joseph is to offer two ideas in the political arena. One is that the present Prime Minister and the present government considers seriously to overrule their own internal party politics and allow the country to be governed by dispensation of government posts to other political parties. So in other words, the country is governed by the strength of all these political parties, and not keep advocating a general election to see who can get first past the post and get the most votes. That would be terribly unwise at the present, because the Labour Party is at its weakest. And if I may conclude this talk, the Labour Party resembles precisely the weaknesses in Christianity. When Jeremy Corbyn won the first election, there was just a brief reference to him in Newsnight that, didn't he resemble the figure of Christ? Well, I thought exactly that. The trouble with that is, you also link his supporters to the same group of people who support Christ, so to speak. And it is a religious people who feel, whom the rest of society cannot empathise with, because they feel they're not modern. And that's exactly the image that the Labour Party has given to the country. They are under a leadership which resembles Christ. Christianity, as I said now, needs to be led by the figure of Adam, and that means a pragmatic figure which deals with the economy, industry, foreign affairs, education, health, all the stable blocks of government. Whereas Jeremy Corbyn, I'm afraid, appeals to those marginalised. Not that I don't want their voice to be heard, but you cannot have a political party run by the marginalised. That is utter, utter foolishness. Those who have committed themselves to the Labour Party should think seriously what is in the interest of the country rather than the interest of their own particular political persuasion. And that is where they can do the nation a great favour if they remove that support system and give it to another person who can symbolise the figure of Adam, and in so doing give to the Labour Party the leadership that it needs. So those are my 3 suggestions. Create a lease for the United Nations to build the airport and also construct a nation building agenda for the people that come under British managerial expertise. So there's a lot of British jobs to be had, managerial jobs. Parliament can decide to give political parties, members of other parties, a portfolio which deals with different parts of the government, because it isn't strong enough. The Conservative Party is not strong enough to hold off all the challenges, especially from the SNP. Give that party custodianship of a particular part of government, and do the same for those millions of people who voted for UKIP and etc. on all the other parties, especially Labour. That way we don't look at ourselves in terms of getting our party to serve the nation. If it means a coalition of parties, why not in the interest of the government? Why not? After all, the mandate is to rule by consensus for the benefit of the British people. And if your political party is not strong enough, take the initiative and make the government strong. That is the important thing. Not to keep your party in office when it is weak. Do the right thing, Theresa. Do the right thing. And take this step of courage. Say to yourself, I'm doing this for the sake of the country. I will choose SNP, offer them this portfolio. UKIP, that portfolio. Labour, all these portfolios. Why not? What is there to be shameful of? Far from it. You who are in office, whether you've been chosen or not, is not important. Take the initiative, and for the sake of Britain, do something which you know is instinctively right for the benefit of the British people. There's no shame in that. There's great honour. And I believe quite firmly that it is the right time to do this. And I believe if we do it, Britain will be the gainer. Britain will benefit, not the political parties. They should be subjugated to the benefit of the British people, and that's what is really important about any political parties. And the leadership that I suggest, if I'm able to offer the Prime Minister any word of consolation or support, it will be in these ideas. Thank you.